Hi, I'm Rachel Lancaster, and this is the Magnificent Midlife podcast. This is where we celebrate women in midlife and beyond. We challenge the status quo and bash those negative stereotypes about being an older woman. We're not over the hill at 40, 50, 60. We're just getting started, and the world needs us now more than ever. I'll be talking all things midlife, about issues that matter, and sharing fabulous stories of amazing women doing very cool stuff. Now's our time. I'm delighted today to introduce you to Deb Johnstone, who is a transformational coach, a professional speaker, a mindset coach, amongst other things, and most recently, a qualified yoga coach. She works especially to help women rediscover themselves in midlife, a bit like me, really. And welcome, Deb.
Thank you, Rachel. I'm really glad to be here.
It's lovely to have you here. We've known each other for a while and we've talked about doing this, haven't we? So it's lovely to finally get you on the podcast. And I'm going to start by finding, well, I know, but I'm going to let my listeners and my viewers find out why you as a Brit are living in Australia.
I was just thinking about this the other day. I've been here for 33 years now. So I've been here for the majority of my life. And I came here when I was 25. So I remember when I got to 50 thinking, half my life in England and half my life in Australia, and now it's the majority of my life in Australia. I came here because I came here on holiday, and I had a 6-week holiday here, and I saw the lifestyle, I saw the weather, experienced everything, and I fell in love with the place. And so when I went back to England, I thought, I'm going to find out what I need to do to migrate over there. And it wasn't as simple as I thought it was, and it's certainly even less simple now. So I went back to school. My partner, who I was with at the time, he had family here, so we joined forces, and between us, it worked on a point system back then. So I don't know if it does that now. And so he had a certain amount of points having family here. And I had a lot of points after I completed my study, because I studied shorthand, and stenography was one of those things that they really wanted at that time. So,
wow.
Yeah, so it took about a year. It took about a year before I knew that we could apply and that we would get through.
But that was a very conscious decision to make at quite a young age, wasn't it? And it's a massive journey to take. It's a massive place to go. It's not like you moved to France just across the channel, is it?
No, it's like right over the other side of the world. And my family was so close-knit like this. It was, I think the last count before I left, there were about 200 members in my family. And they all lived in the same area in England. They were all in Leicestershire. So, and at one point, there were a number of our same family members all living in the same street. When I was a little girl, there were probably about 4 or 5. So that's how close we were. And my poor mum, when I told her, she was so good. She held it together and tried her best not to beg me not to go.
And now you're a mum, you know how that
feels. Oh my God, I know how that feels. Like my youngest son has just moved over to Western Australia, which is like a 7-day trip by car.
7 days?
7 days, yeah.
Oh my goodness, that's the size of Australia, isn't it? I have no idea how to.
It's crazy. It's crazy. And so for me, like, they've just had their second baby, and I haven't even seen that little boy yet. For me, when they were going, I had to remind myself of how my mum felt back then, and it was so much more difficult then, because, you remember those days. It was $100 to make a phone call. $100. crazy money. And, it would take 36 hours to get here, and the flights were really expensive. So, so it was a much more difficult situation back then. So I really reminded myself of that when he moved, because originally I fell to pieces.
So you had to channel your mum.
I did, yeah.
It's super hard, isn't it, as we get older and have to say goodbye. My son, actually, on last Saturday, we're recording this on a Wednesday, last Saturday he went back to America, and I don't know how long he's going to be there for. I'm kind of crossing my fingers he's going to get a job and manage to get back here. But at the moment, he's kind of gone indefinitely, and he's been away at college for the last 3 years. Apart from he had almost a year of COVID, he's back with me, which was one of the highlights of my COVID experience, that my son was home. But we have to get used to it, don't we? We have to use them going away, and a long way away.
Yeah, we do have to get used to it. And especially with the COVID situation too, when there's borders involved. I mean, you've got 2 borders there, and so have I. I've got 2 borders. I've got the WA state government to deal with, and the Queensland state government.
Because of all the local lockdowns still.
Yeah, so it's almost like we're in 2 different countries.
That's interesting. Yeah, because actually, as of this recording, I cannot go to him. He can go to America because he has a green card. But if anything happens, I'm touching wood frantically here, listeners.
Don't talk about it.
I can't go to him. And that I've heard that, because I have friends from China who, their elderly parents have been dying. And they've tried to get back and they've been refused visas. They haven't been able to get back. And then eventually they've got the visa. And their parents have died when they've been doing the 3-week quarantine in the hotel. And it's just...
That's awful.
It's awful, isn't it? It's such a different world that we have to navigate now.
Yeah, isn't it? Isn't it? It's so different. 2 years ago, you would never, ever, ever have imagined a situation like this 2 years ago. It's incredible.
And it's going to carry on for a while, isn't it? Certainly, different countries in different parts of the world are going to have very different ways of operating and engaging with the outside world. Wow, so you've got 2 borders to cross.
I know, 2 borders.
Your son in the same country.
So there really is 2 borders, because first of all, we have to go from Queensland to the Northern Territory, and then the Northern Territory to Western Australia. So, and we're dealing with all those different state governments just to visit each. At the moment, the border's closed. I can't get over unless I do 14 days quarantine in WA. So,
wow.
Yeah.
So that's domestic quarantine.
Yeah, domestic quarantine. It is crazy. So it's just a real big example to us, isn't it? How nothing is ever certain. The only thing that's certain is that things are going to change, and we've had change after change after change.
And all we can do is pivot and evolve and move with those changes, because if we don't, we just get stuck and we suffer, don't we?
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we do, because we can't hold on. We can't resist it. It's the same, with any change. If the more we resist it, the harder we make it for ourselves. It's, if we have that internal resistance to it, it's a little bit like having a baby, really, isn't it? If we struggle, then it gets more painful.
And I'm always saying that about menopause as well. If we struggle, if we fight our wombs at this time in our lives,
that's right.
We're just going to get into a difficult situation. And it's better to kind of go with the flow, or the lack of the flow. Yeah. Embrace it. Embrace the change. So in fact, we've scooped around what I was going to ask you about, but we'll come back to what I was going to ask you about, because we've come to change and we've come to adapting to change and coping with change. So I'd love to dig into that with you, because I know that is a lot of what you do. You are a transformational coach, and you enable women especially to transform, and in midlife. So tell me more about that.
Yeah. Well, midlife is a time when so much changes. You know, we have different periods throughout life where we have all these different changes that happen. For some, it happens earlier than others. Like, you know, my mum passed away very early. Now, for a lot of women, that doesn't happen until midlife. For me, it happened when I was in my 20s. So, you know, for some women, it happens when they're teenagers or even when they're children. So it's different for everyone. But midlife tends to be the time where we seem to have a lot of changes all at once, doesn't it? It's
Mm-hmm.
you know what, we might have elderly parents to look after, or they might pass away, relationships change, kids leave home. That's such a hard one, isn't it? That's such a hard
Go
one.
to other countries.
I know.
On the other side of countries.
I know.
Let's not go back there again.
I
We'll start crying. But
you know, kids leaving home, if you've been in a long-term marriage or relationship, that totally changes the relationship too.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of women are left sitting next to that other person on the couch and thinking, who the hell are you? In fact, who the hell am I?
Yeah.
You know, it's and then there's other women that have been single. You know, I was a single mum for many years, and now just this week moving into a new house with my partner, that's totally new for me. And there's a big change there. There's a loss because I'm losing my single life. I'm losing my own space in my own apartment. You know, I think sometimes we fail to recognize those things. We fail to recognize those losses. We just know that it doesn't feel right. So, and it can create a lot of confusion. I mean, you know this, Rachel. You work with this as well.
Yeah, everything just sort of goes up in the air, doesn't it? And you have to wait. Sometimes you have to wait and see where things fall. But also you need to be proactive about making the things fall where you want them to fall.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, for sure. And a lot of us don't, and we don't start looking at where we want things to change or where we want things to be different. We just end up staying stuck, and we don't know why we're not happy. We just know we're not happy. And that can be a really disempowering place to be, I think. And it becomes increasingly difficult to know how to get out.
And sometimes it's easier to stay stuck, isn't it? Because that's what we know. It's uncomfortable, but it's also comfortable. It's familiar, isn't it? It's where we know how to operate, if not thrive. We know how to move the pieces around the board, even though they're not necessarily going the way we want them to go.
Exactly. Yeah, it is. It's an uncomfortable comfortable, or a comfortable uncomfortable. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah, we know we're not all that happy with where the pieces are on the board, but we don't know where they want to go. We want them to go. We've got no idea. And I think that's because along the way we've lost touch with who we are. And if we don't know who we are, then how on earth are we going to know where we want those pieces to sit? You know, through all the roles that we've held through life, like whether that be mother or daughter or wife or friend or granddaughter, whatever roles we've held through life, and even the roles in our career, you know, whether we're an accountant or a bookkeeper or a coach or a nurse or a teacher, whatever career it is that we've had, again, that is a role. And we kind of identify with those roles. I know I have in the past. I know I strongly identified with being a coach, strongly. And it wasn't until my dad passed away that I started to look past that. And that's because I hit rock bottom. And I think that's what happens with a lot of women. It's when we hit rock bottom that we're prepared to take a look at it.
So what did you look at then? What pushed you over into rock bottom, and how did you get yourself up?
Yeah, well, when Dad passed away, I think Dad wasn't part of my life for quite a long time. He didn't deal well with grief after my mum passed, and he didn't really go through the grieving process well. And so we ended up as a family being a little bit separated. So Dad came back into our lives just as my children were leaving home. So there was kind of like a swap thing happened there for me. Yeah. And it wasn't like he was dependent. He wasn't dependent on me. He was a very independent man. But I still felt that mothering instinct towards my dad, you know. And still it was difficult when my kids left, but he kind of filled a little bit of a void there for me. And he lived very, very close, just across the road. And so he was part of my everyday life. And so when he passed away, it was kind of like everything that I thought I was had been taken away, and I lost motivation, I lost confidence, and I completely lost a sense of who I was. I lost interest in things that I normally do. You know, I still had my regular clients who I love, but I didn't have that drive anymore in my work. You know, I wasn't driven to keep starting new things or, you know, grow my business bigger. I'd lost all that. I completely lost my drive. And so there again, there was another identity there, that identity of a coach. You know, it was really challenged. So I knew that I needed to explore who I was. I knew that's something that I needed to do. And I knew it instinctively, but I gathered all my tools. You know, you've got them as well. You just gather them all, don't you? The ones that you've collected over the years. And I just started writing. I started writing and exploring who I was. Who am I? Who am I when I'm not this? Who am I when I'm not that? You know, what are my qualities? What lights me up from the inside? What do I love doing? What don't I love doing? All of that sort of stuff. What are my values? Even though I knew my values, I needed to do a deeper exploration of those as well. You know, my values of connection were challenged when Dad died. So, you know, there was some beliefs around connection that I needed to change. Because the way I connected with him from then on was very, very different. Obviously, I couldn't just pick up the phone to him anymore. So there was a lot of exploration in that. It was kind of prompted by a calling, and I call it a calling because it was like in those moments of darkness, because it was very dark in those few months when I was grieving. It was like a light shining out to me, and it was like a calling or an intuitive nudge, whatever you want to call it. Something that had been prompting me probably 6 to 12 months before Dad died, but I'd been ignoring it. And I kept thinking, no, look, you know, I'm doing great things in my business. It's doing really well. I'm not going to change things now. No, I'll just park that. I'll leave that to one side. But when Dad passed away and I was going through that really dark stuff, that was the only thing that was speaking to me, the only thing. And it was that prompted me. It was like, okay, all right, well, if I'm meant to do this, then I need to know who I am now and whether it aligns with me. And that's what started it. That's why I started exploring. I had no idea how I was going to work with midlife women at that stage. I had no idea. It was in the exploration that I started to gain insight into who I am and what really lights me up. I think I remember saying to you the first time we connected, I want to feel like this every day. I want to feel excited every day. And okay, what will it take me to feel excited? What do I need to be doing to feel that way? And that's when I started learning new things. That's when I started my work in learning to be a yoga teacher. And that's when I developed the summit, which I interviewed you on, the very first one that I held. Yeah. It was a real learning phase for me. It was the first time since my coaching career started that I didn't start with an outcome in mind. The very first time. I just started with the first step.
So you were really experiencing and living what you're now working with women to achieve.
Yeah. And that's how I knew the kind of program I could develop because of the process that I'd been through. I mean, the process that I took myself through wasn't as structured as the program is, but it was going through that process myself that I was able to break it down into a structure later on.
Well, you and me, we've both been through that sort of period of discovery with different issues that have prompted that, but we've both gone through that internal evaluation and that process of change to get to somewhere completely different, haven't we?
Yeah. And there's nothing, I don't think there's anything more empowering as a coach when you've actually been through it yourself. I think there's nothing, I don't think there's anything that makes a better coach than actually going through something yourself, because you know exactly how women, I mean, no, you don't know exactly how women feel, because we all feel differently about different things. But you've got some idea, you know that we know the feelings we can experience, and it helps you come from a place of a lot more compassion, I think.
Both for ourselves as well as the women working with. Yeah, because I'm often, yesterday I had a chat with a woman, and it's classic. She was being so hard on herself. And I just said, look, you would not talk to your best friend like this. You would not expect this of your best friend. You wouldn't expect it of me, and you've only just met me.
Yeah.
So be nice to yourself. Be compassionate towards yourself. Because we beat ourselves up, don't we?
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we do. We can be our own worst enemies, truly. And it does nothing to motivate us when we're beating ourselves up like that. In fact, it has the opposite effect. We're less likely to want to put ourselves out there if we're beating ourselves up, if we're being unkind to ourselves. And it's kind of like, if you think about a child, when you're raising a child, you don't berate them for all the mistakes that they make. You encourage them by focusing on the great things they do. I think I look at my little grandson, and we're constantly saying to him, "Oh, you're so clever." You're such a clever boy. And really, how often do we speak to ourselves like that?
It's so important, isn't it? So important.
Yeah.
So you talk about 3 levels of change, don't you? So what are those?
Well, I often find that women in this phase of life are confused about their direction. They don't have a lot of clarity on direction. They don't know what their next phase of life is going to look like, or they don't even know what's possible for them, or sometimes they don't even believe anything's possible that's different for them. And so new direction, what it is that we want to have in our life, is obviously achieved by doing different things, because we keep doing the same things.
We forget that, don't we?
That's right.
Do things differently for things to be different.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. The thing is, though, how do you know what it is that you want to do, or what it is that you need to do to get there? How do you know that if you have no idea who you are? Like, how do you know that? So the 3 levels of change is really, for me, it's identity. It's about who we're being, who we are now, the activities that we like doing, or the things that we want to do, or the things that we need to do to create the chapter that we want, to create whatever chapter it is that we want. So I always start with the identity. I always start with the identity. And that's about getting clear on who we are without all those roles and labels. Just imagining who we actually are without that label of mother or daughter, or what actually makes us us. Because the ego mind needs to know this. It just needs to know this. Yeah, it needs to know this so that we can start making some decisions. Then when we know that, it becomes so much easier to be able to see what we want to do next. So much easier. We can see where it's aligned, because we don't want to make a choice on what we're going to do next and it's not in alignment with who we really are, because it's not going to make us happy if we do that.
I went through life doing that.
Yeah.
I did what I thought I was supposed to do. I never ever thought about who I was and what I actually wanted fundamentally for me, I was on that sort of, we're on that hamster wheel often, aren't we? We sort of go through life, there's this rough plan, and we do this, and then we do that, then we do the other. And I always talk about midlife is this wonderful opportunity to just stop.
Yeah.
And to think. And to pause. Me, no pause, menopause. It doesn't mean not pause, it means me, think about me. No, I'm going to say no to the world.
Yeah.
And I'm going to pause. I'm going to pause and take the time. And it's very powerful, isn't it? If we do that, if we do the work.
It's so powerful. And it's a gift. It really is a gift.
I agree. We're on opposite sides of the planet, but we might as well be next door because we absolutely think the same, don't we? And I love that about what you do, because we really are kindred spirits. It's always good to chat with you.
We are. It is. I remember, thinking as difficult as my dad's death was, I've always noticed the gift that he gave me. He gave me a gift. He gave me the gift of space to actually see and respond to my calling. That's the gift that he gave me. Mm.
There's always something we can learn out of everything, isn't there?
Yeah.
And I think if it's hard to do that, but now I'm really trying to be curious and to think, even with bad things that happen, what can I learn from this?
There's always something, isn't there? Always. Yeah. And I think what you were mentioning before, saying no to the world, I think that's one of the things that really gets in the way, hey? Is so many of us find it so difficult to say no.
Yep. Well, we're not taught to, are we?
No.
The men can say no. The women, we're the yes ones. Yes, dear. Yes, honey. Yes, love. Of course.
Yeah.
I'm here to serve.
I know. Amazing, isn't
Goodness.
it?
What's that about? Crikey. But I see it in my mum all the time. All the time. She had an issue just the other day, and I said, look, Mum, you need to tell this person how you felt.
Yeah.
And she's, I can see she's sort of, oh no, I can't do that. Can't express to somebody that, I wasn't happy about something.
Isn't it funny? Yeah.
Yeah. And we apologise, don't we? That's it's a British thing. I don't know whether you've seen something different in Australia or whether it's an Anglo-Saxon thing, but we're apologising all the bloody time, aren't we? What's that about?
I don't know.
Do they do it in Australia too?
I don't think I've noticed. I don't think so.
Have you stopped doing it since you moved to Australia? You don't say sorry so much?
No, I don't say sorry. I don't think I do. I think...
Or is it just me? No, it's not just me. I know it's not. It is a cultural thing that
I think it's a cultural
do apologise
thing.
a lot, don't
we? I know that. I remember when I did my coach training, there was a woman in the training who kept apologizing all the time. Like every time she spoke, she'd apologize. Every time she asked a question, she'd apologize. And the trainer addressed it in the session, and she pointed out, she said, have you noticed that you always apologize before you speak? Yeah, what makes you think you need to apologize? You don't need to apologize to anyone.
And I think that comes in midlife as well, that we contribute to making ourselves invisible, or we perceive ourselves to be invisible, because we don't take up the space, because we're apologetic, because we've bought into those negative stereotypes about being an older woman. I'm not as valuable as I once was. I'm therefore going to retreat. I'm going to take up less space.
Yeah.
I'm going to be apologetic for just existing.
Yeah.
And that all contributes, doesn't it? And then we're surprised that we're invisible. Instead of going, hey, I'm here.
Yeah.
I'm Superwoman. Thank you very much. And you're going to listen to me. And I'm going to do what I want to do.
Exactly. It's really amazing how our perception and our beliefs about something how it affects the way we behave, it's incredible, isn't it? And if you just change your perception around, yeah, I'm actually a strong, wise woman, and what I have to say needs to be heard, or I'm worthy, or it will affect how you walk in a room.
Absolutely. The whole posture. I can imagine anybody listening to this now, you're sitting up straighter, aren't you? You're standing up straighter. But you know, we can shrink in midlife, can't we?
Yeah.
Because we somehow don't think we're deserving.
Yeah.
Because we're not young. I think that's the essence of it. We're not young and we're not fertile anymore. But that doesn't mean we're not fertile in other ways, because I always say the end of my fertility has become the most fertile time of my life. And that's the opportunity, that's the gift of midlife, isn't it?
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah, it's a time, our fertility gets channeled into our creative zone, doesn't it? We become a lot more creative if we allow ourselves.
Don't need to waste all that energy on periods.
Exactly.
We can direct it elsewhere.
Exactly. Yeah. And if we allow ourselves, we're all creative, but so many of us are told at a very young age that we're not creative, and we tend to carry that through as well.
I did. I never thought of myself as creative. Never. My first husband was a fine artist. He was a painter, and all the creativity of the family was his.
Yeah,
I didn't have any. And yet now look what I do.
Exactly. Exactly. And how creative you are. And I think it's our perception of what creativity is as well.
Well, you know, we have a second creative spurt in our 50s. So there's one in our 20s and one in our 50s. And I think that correlates perfectly with menopause.
Yeah.
And that whole change and who we are in midlife and who we become, which really I find so exciting. Just imagine this whole world of creative midlife women. Bring it on.
Yeah. What we could do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because are we the biggest demographic or one of the biggest demographics in the world?
We're certainly one of.
Yeah.
And eventually we'll be the biggest, because there's just more women, aren't there?
Exactly.
The birth rate's dropping, so the older women are just going to get more and more and more. So we missed off the third level, the third level of change. We did the be, and the do.
And the do.
Then where do we go?
And the have is the life that we have. The life that we have, or the career that we have, or the relationship that we have, or all of those together, or the lifestyle we have, and what we want to have in it, because it's our choice. Our choices don't get limited because we're getting older. They probably get more expansive. Yeah.
Unless we limit them in our own heads.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. I mean, even the choice of travel at the moment, we could say, oh, we're limited because there's so many countries we can't go to, blah, blah, blah. What about the different areas in our own countries that we can still go to? There's still the potential for travel, if travel is one of the things that light us up.
That is so true. I've discovered things in my local area that I didn't know about, just because I'm spending more time in it. And I've been here a long time. I mean, 20 years, but I'm still discovering stuff.
That's amazing, isn't it? I remember when I came over to Australia, and about every 4 or 5 years, I would save and take both my kids back to England. And every time, the first time I went back to England, I saw Buckingham Palace for the first time. I'd lived in England for 25 years. Never seen Buckingham Palace. Wow. Yeah. So it just shows you the amount of stones that are unturned when we really start looking in just our own backyard.
So apart from the pain of the grandchildren being elsewhere, what's it like being a grandma? I don't know many grandmas of my age. You are a very glamorous grandma, has to be said.
Thank you.
So what's it like, sort of moving into that stage?
Well, it's funny you said a glamorous grandma, because before my first grandchild was born, they all said to me, "What do you want to be called?" I said, "I don't know. Let me have a think about it." And so I said, "I think I want to be called Glammy." "No, you're not being called Glammy." I said, "I thought it was supposed to be my choice." They went, "No, not Glammy. You've got Nanny, Nana, or Grandma." And I went, "No."
Oh, no. That's not much of a choice, is it? How about you want to be Bumblebee?
I know. I said, "What about Gigi?" "No." What about Dee Dee?" "No."
That is no choice at all.
I know. So I chose Nanny with an I instead of a Y to make it slightly different. I think I think the girls thought, "We just got to control your mother because she's going to come up with some weird and wacky ideas." They were prepared for me this time.
And you've got 3 grandchildren.
I've got 3. My partner just had his first, so there's 4. And my eldest son and his wife are just about to have their second child in January, so that'll be 5.
Another one. Wow.
And it'll be 5 in 2.5 years. It will be by the time the 5th one's born. Isn't that incredible?
That is incredible. So that's a real kind of shift, isn't it? I would have thought.
Big shift. And you know what? Before any of them were born, I used to listen to my friends who were grandmothers. They'll probably be listening to this. I used to listen to my friends who were grandmothers, and I think, what are they going on about? Like, I just don't know what all the fuss is about, right? And now it's like, I get it. That's all you want to do is be with them and cuddle them and play with them. It's just the most amazing experience to be a grandmother. Most amazing. They're so gorgeous, these little babies. They're so gorgeous. I know.
So that makes it, trebly, quadruply difficult when they're on the other side of the country.
Yeah, it makes it really difficult when FaceTime is our friend. The latest little one that was born middle of August, I haven't held him. I've just seen him on FaceTime. Yeah. And I don't know when I'll be able to hold him because the border's closed. So yeah.
Very hard.
Yeah, very hard. And then seeing his big little brother, he's not even 2 yet, being all protective like brothers do. It's so cute. So cute.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you. It is the best thing, the best thing. It's no one prepares you for the love, like the surge of love that you feel as a grandmother. It's kind of or probably they try to prepare you for it, but you just don't get it, right? But the surge of love that you feel from the minute you first see them, even before you see them, is just as strong as the love you feel for your own child when your own child's born. But it's different.
Really?
Yeah, it's different because you're more of an observer. So you notice things that you didn't notice when your own kids were little. Like, I've noticed that my grandson picks things up with his left hand, and I'm thinking, and he's only just turned 1, and I'm thinking he's going to be left-handed. I would never have known that with my own children. Never have noticed. So you become more, it's more of a curiosity and a fascination of watching this new life force coming into the physical world. Yeah.
That's lovely. Wonderful.
Which is, it's kind of like my role as a daughter ended, although it never does, even when they've passed on. My role as a daughter ended, and then only 6 months later, my first grandchild arrived. So it was almost like, okay, finished with that role now. Now you can become a grandmother. It's really, really amazing how it happened.
It's that evolution of life, isn't
it is. And I really saw that circle of life happening right before my eyes.
So what is your best advice for women in this time of life? How can we transform our lives? How can we rediscover ourselves? What's your best advice for us?
Well, I love your philosophy about the pausing and the saying no to the world. I really love that, because that gives you the space, right? That really gives you the space to begin exploring yourself. Really, ask, it's about sitting down and take a journal. I always say the journal's the best way to do it, because once we start writing, it flows more. Well, if we try to do it in our head, we don't get that flow happening. Start exploring, who am I? And you can start by writing down what the roles are. Start by writing them down. And then ask yourself, who am I outside of all that? What are my qualities? What makes me me? What lights me up? What do I enjoy? What's important to me? What do I value? And it's not an overnight thing, is it? It's something that takes time. It took me probably 3 months to do that full exploration on myself. Because once you start asking the questions, the answers don't always automatically appear. You might start off by saying, I don't know, right? I don't know, which is great. It's a great place to be. If you don't know, it means you're on the verge of seeing something different. But it's about not stopping there. And so many of us do stop there. They go, I don't know, and we just stop and just carry on doing our everyday things. I would even, if you can't rely on people to give you space, go away. Go away somewhere. Find your own space, yeah. And start that exploration process. And just keep at it and keep at it. Spending time in nature really helps us get in touch with ourselves. I know for me, if I'm journaling, I quite often do it on the beach. I find it a lot easier. And once you start to explore who you are, often the things that you'd like to do start to float in anyway. That's what happened with me. You can ask yourself other questions like, if anything were possible, what would I choose to do? What have I always wanted to do but never given a go? What did I start to do many years ago and then stopped because I had a baby, or I got this career? Or there's a lot of times we interrupt ourselves to do something else, but that doesn't mean we can't come back to it. Or it might be something totally different, something we've never done before. But it begins with knowing ourselves deeply, not just on a surface level. And that depth only comes with sticking at it, just exploring and asking those questions, and keep asking those questions over and over again. Ask ourselves, what else? Who else am I? What else makes me me? I had pages when I did it, pages and pages. And you wouldn't imagine before you start that all of that stuff would come out, because you're not used to doing it. But there's pages. How do people describe me? That's another one. Quite often, if we listen carefully, our closest friends will often say something that we're too busy doing that we don't pay attention to it, I remember one of my friends once said to me, when I was in a relationship that was a short relationship that wasn't really serving me, she said to me, he's not right for you, Deb, because you care too much. I'm like, I'm caring. I'm caring. And I remembered that. So just start. I say just start.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Magnificent Midlife podcast. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe or follow, share it, and I'd love a 5-star review. It really helps other listeners find the podcast. You can find out more information about this episode in the show notes at magnificentmidlife.com. That's also where you can access one-to-one mentoring with me, my membership program, and other resources to help make your midlife magnificent. Make the most of your next chapter. Help me change the world, one magnificent midlife woman at a time.